the next topic is called leveraging megatrends, and some people ask me, what does that mean? It's actually a very important topic, and I'm going to let Raul share a bit more about that and call on your other speaker, Raul.
Thank you very much. When we started the conference, we thought, what is the best way to help all of us to be present, for all of us to be focused? And I'll be calling up in a minute a dear colleague of mine, Peng, to have a discussion with me on this, and it's about megatrends. Megatrends are trends that go so slow that in the moment you hardly notice them, but 5 years later, you know that things have really changed. In the next 2 minutes, I want to share what I think are 5 relevant ones, and then Peng and I will have a discussion, and I will very much hope to get Peng's perspectives on this, because I always wanted to have it, so I thought I'd get him on stage on that. So with that...
Raul?
Yes?
I'm sorry. Can I introduce?
You can always.
So the one thing that I didn't do justice was to explain who you are. So do you mind sharing a little bit about who you are? I mean, isn't this fun? I can just make fun of him all day. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. His wife is here, so
if you really want to know who I am, ask her. Because I don't really know. No. In short, I'm mixed. That means I was born in the US, I grew up in Germany, my parents are Dutch, and my wife is Korean. We have 4 kids, so they're very, very mixed. I was in my first life a banker, an interest rate derivatives trader, and I failed. I knew I would get fired, so I moved to another job, and I went to a consulting company, and I stuck around there for 23 years, McKinsey, and the last 3 years I was the chairman of McKinsey here in Indonesia, and then I moved to the board of Endeavor, and I knew that I was at the right place.
Perfect. And if I may just add one tiny thing, we have 2,800 mentors globally at Endeavor, and every time there's a mentoring session, entrepreneurs are asked to rate the mentor, and we have a top 10 mentor list within the Endeavor Global Network, and one of the top 10 most memorable is yours truly, this gentleman over here. And by the end of today, I think you will know why.
Okay, now I'm blushing. Thank you for saying that, Sati. Let's get back to the megatrends. I feel more comfortable talking about them. There are 5, and I don't know if we can show a chart. The first megatrend that everybody knows here is the digital disruption. The key thing I want to mention on it is the speed of change. Over the last 200 years, we've had major disruptions. We've had the printing press, we had the steam engine, and then we had the internet. But the key thing is the speed. It took 50 years for telephone to really take hold in America. It took 40 years to have 50 million people hearing about the radio. Wait, what's going on? Too slow. Can we click back? No, click. This is when you ask somebody else to do your charts, and then they do it in the other way around. So let's go. Which one was the first chart? Okay, let's start with the rise of the emerging markets. I can do the story the other way around. The rise of the emerging markets. From the year 0 to the year 1700, half of the global economy was in Asia. Then for 200 years, it was in Europe. And over the last 50 years, the emerging markets have back about 15% of global GDP. We all know that we're going to be mean reverting back to 50%. Global GDP is not yet back in Asia. It's not yet back in Africa. It's still going there. To give you another number, today, most of the large corporates are in America. By 2025, half of the global largest corporations will have their headquarters in China. This is a megatrend. We here benefit from it, But it has not really begun yet. It's going to go much further. This is a mega trend. Now let's see what's the second mega trend. Let's put it up there. I think it was on the right. Aging population. Today already, in 70% of the world, the fertility rate is below 2. That means women together have less children than their people. In 60% of the world, the population is shrinking. By 2050, the number of people older than 65 years old will have doubled. The number of people who are older than 80 will have gone up 4-fold to 400 million. Now you see, Raul is probably smoking dope, because when you look around this room, that's not right. Indonesia is one of the big exceptions. Indonesia is one of the only countries that has a population strength going on until 2040. But our investors, the people outside who look at us, who want to invest in us, take anything that invests in the aging population very, very serious. Next global trend, urbanization. In Indonesia alone, in the next 20 years, 70 million people will move forever from the countryside into the city. 70 million people, that's all of Germany. And if you want to tease or pester an Australian, you just say it's 3 times Australia. And if you want to make other people in Malaysia slightly depressed, you say it's 3 times Malaysia. That's what's happening in this country alone. By 2030, 50% of global GDP will happen in 450 cities in emerging markets. A different fact. So urbanization is a huge disruption, discontinuity, and opportunity for us entrepreneurs. Next global trend. Resource scarcity. We all know that corn prices and soya prices right now are at a global low. But by 2030, we are going to be 40% short water. And the one country that has the biggest problem with water in the world is China. China has all the land it wants to feed its people. It doesn't have the water to grow the corn, the tomatoes that its people want. Resource scarcity is a huge issue. We will need 70% more steel by 2060. I'm an optimist. I don't think this is that we're at doomsday, but it is a huge mega trend and we have to deal with it. And the last mega trend, I hope it's coming, otherwise we're going to invent it. Let's see if the chart has it, is the digital disruption. And that one I already discussed. And for me, the digital disruption is speed. So with those 5 disruptions, mega trends in mind, I would love to ask Yu Peng up on the stage with me and have a chat about these. Give him a hand. Peng, you are somebody who always thinks alone. So do you agree with these trends, or am I missing one?
Generally, yes. I guess being here in Indonesia and Southeast Asia, you worry about some of the trends less, right? For example, aging population, most countries here don't have that problem. So, and if you don't have that problem, you might not be set up well to solve the problems. But yeah, in general, I agree with them. The one that I pay attention to the most, and because I think the impact is going to be pretty spectacular, is the digital disruption. Yeah.
Could you go deeper on that? If you would go into the digital disruption and you would paint your mega trends within that area, how would you describe them?
Yeah. A number of years ago, quite a number of years ago, I started school in computer science, in artificial intelligence, right? So I'm basically an engineer. what engineers do is we improve the world just a little bit better, right? So it's more efficient, right? Imagine one engineer after another engineer. Over time, the world gets more and more and more efficient.
Right.
You know, what happens to jobs? What happens to all the things human beings do with labor to put food on the table, right? Jobs become less and less valuable. Labor becomes less and less valuable. So let me take a concrete example. We hear about self-driving cars. If you deploy self-driving vehicles in a country, about 2 to 3% of the population go out of jobs, right?
Wow.
So that's just one piece of technology. Now imagine these improvements coming over time, more and more, and what happens, right? So as it's happening, the people who create the technologies make a lot of money. You can see Uber, you can see Airbnb, all these big companies, and our local champions, Gojek, etc. But what happens over the longer term is what we need to think about at some point.
Wow. Now, maybe the question also here in the room is, what's the implication of these disruptions for us as entrepreneurs, as people who build new companies?
Yeah. So I have a way of talking about Monk's Hill, which is my investment fund, that throws a few people off. I say we're a tech venture fund that does not invest in tech companies. Right? We invest in tech-enabled companies. So the companies we invest in are typically not just selling technology. In fact, we haven't invested one that just sells technology. They typically solve a problem, and they solve it with tech, and they solve it better and better over time. Right? So that's what we're looking for, entrepreneurs to disrupt big chunks of the ecosystem, the economy. And that's how I would encourage every entrepreneur to look at it. It doesn't matter if you're in agriculture or you're in energy, you're going to figure out how to use tech to improve, make yourself more efficient, etc.
Could we go a level deeper? And what does it mean for us entrepreneurs as a person to be successful in a world that's so disruptive and so fast changing? Out of your personal experiences or views, any thoughts?
Yeah. So I guess one of the things that, because we do businesses that are startups that are pretty small, excuse me, we don't see the impact of what we do at the larger level, right? And we need to think about it. Thank you. And we need to think about it. For example, say, let's take a look at Uber, right? They employ 1.4 million drivers around the world. Officially, they're contractors, I guess, but 1.4 million people around the world have jobs. The other thing they're doing is they're looking at deploying automated vehicles around the world. What happens when they start doing that, right? They should have a sense of responsibility, right? As you are small, you might not feel that because you just disrupt a small chunk of the economy. But as you grow, I think you need to worry about that.
One thing you once told me, which really touched me, was you said, all the successful entrepreneurs I know have a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
Could you expand on that?
Yeah. Ultimately, entrepreneurship is a very, very tough game, right? Frankly, life is a tough game. If you are not clear on why you're doing this, if you're not clear on the motivations, what you're trying to achieve, ultimately, when you hit a bump, you'll be very, very tempted to just give up, right? And I think purpose is very, very fundamental to enabling you to power through.
I would like to add one thing to that, and we already got a sign that the next team is already there to start, so that's a good sign. I spoke to an older Korean man. I met him here in one of the bars late in the evening. He walked up to me and a friend of mine said, "Why are two bullies in this bar?" That's how Korean that place was. And halfway through the evening, he shared, "Well, I came to Indonesia because I had gone bankrupt in Korea. And I could not endure the shame for my wife and myself and my children to live in my country. So I had to leave my country. And I'm now a national in Indonesia. The world has changed. Nowadays, it's okay, I think, to go bankrupt. That was really the case. But what I hear you say, although this world is in a way freer, if you don't have this inner compass of purpose, you fail.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about how a lot of management consultants, McKinsey, BCG, etc., they've gone over to starting companies. You know, why do they do that, right? I think if you talk to a lot of them, and some of them are here, it's very simple. They're trying to figure out purpose. They're trying to figure out what's meaningful to them. We all have about 100 years on this planet, then it's over, right? We're all gonna die, news for you. So what is it all about? Right? And you need to think about, I think any thinking person needs to think about it and decide. That's important. They need to decide on what they want to do with their lives, right? And then go do it, right? Otherwise, it's just, I guess you could decide your life is just an exploration, but that's still a decision.
Well, it's very guiding for me. Thank you for your thoughts. Give him a hand.